The 5 preseason All-Americans were announced on Monday, and there's a glaring issue.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, folks, and welcome into the Locked On College Basketball Podcast, a daily national college hoop show, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host for today's show, Andy Patton, and you are joining at the place to get your college basketball content every single day, Monday through Friday, in season, out of season, does not matter. We are here for you every single day of the week. Want to thank all of you who are making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day, and give a special shout out to those everyday listeners and those of you who are hanging out with us in the Locked On College Basketball Discord community. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College, and folks, you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Well, we got a 6-pack to close out the show. 6-pack is when we talk about 6 different games all in one segment. We're talking exhibition action today, some fun results that we've seen already. We'll talk about what it means and, more importantly, what it does not mean to close out the show. We're also talking Tyon Grant-Foster getting his waiver appeal denied by the NCAA, but he has a hearing for a preliminary injunction on Thursday. We'll talk about what that could mean for Grant-Foster and for Gonzaga. But first, on Monday, the AP preseason All-Americans were revealed, and there are 5 players selected, and we have some thoughts. So we're going to start there today. For the most part, this list of AP preseason All-Americans is not a shock. Braden Smith from Purdue is the consensus choice, not only for a preseason All-American, but for the National Player of the Year. He is the favorite to win the Wooden Award, to win all of the various National Player of the Year awards. Doesn't mean that he will, of course, but it is obvious that he is the front runner at this point, just like it was obvious for a couple of years that Zach Edey, his former teammate, was going to win that award. We'll see if Smith ends up doing it, but he is certainly the obvious pick to be here on this All-American team. And then 2 other players that are pretty consistently showing up on these preseason All-Americans, whether it's by other voting panelists, whether it's just by other media outlets. You're pretty consistently going to see the names JT Toppin from Texas Tech and Yaxel Lindeborg from Michigan on those lists. Toppin transferred to Texas Tech last year from New Mexico, was outstanding for a Red Raiders team that was very, very good, that profiles to be very good again this year. Toppin is going to be a critical piece for Coach Grant McCaslin's team, alongside rising sophomore Christian Anderson and some key pieces they've added in the transfer portal, Lawan Watts, Tyree Bryan among them. Toppin should be handling the ball a ton. He should be getting a bunch of paint touches, up over 20 points per game, 10-ish rebounds. Very good reason for him to be on this list. Yaxel Lindeborg transferred to Michigan from UAB last year. He actually was in the NBA draft process for a very long time and was widely considered a first-round pick candidate for that draft, but ended up withdrawing from the draft, coming back to go play for Dusty May at Michigan. We saw what Michigan did with transfer Danny Wolf from Yale last year, so Lindeborg certainly on track to be a big-time player in the front court for this Wolverines team. Already had 31 points in their first exhibition game. We'll talk about that a little later in the show, but another guy that nobody's really quibbling when you see Yaxel Lindeborg on first team, second team All-American projections. 2 other names on this list, however, one of them, AJ Dybantsa from BYU. Dybantsa is not a controversial choice necessarily, but there are plenty of people out there who would not have him even their first choice as a freshman for All-American. A lot of people who wouldn't even have him as their second choice for a preseason All-American. That would be Darren Peterson at Kansas and or Cameron Boozer at Duke. Dybantsa should get a huge opportunity to score the basketball in Kevin Young's very, very high-octane, quick-paced offense. Dybantsa hung 30 on Nebraska in an exhibition game. Again, we'll talk about that later, and looks like somebody who's going to score nearly at will this upcoming season. There are some concerns about his defense and BYU's defense as a whole, which could be an issue for Dybantsa being an All-American. It's harder if your team is not good. I expect BYU is going to be very good, but if they disappoint compared to preseason expectations, for better or worse, that will be used as an argument against Dybantsa and could be held against him in terms of making an AP first team. I don't have an issue with Dybantsa on the first team. I will tell you my first team in a bit here. I don't have Dybantsa on it, but I don't think that it's an egregious pick. But again, I think there are some people who would potentially could have two freshmen on their AP top or on their top 5 All-American picks, and one of them still would not be Dybantsa just because of how great this trio of freshmen is in this class. The last pick is the one that has caused some attention, is the name that people kind of raised an eyebrow at when they first saw this AP top 5 come out. And that is Alex Condon at Florida. And I want to be clear, Alex Condon is a good player. He was a good player last year. He's going to be a good player this year. But he is not somebody that is regularly showing up in these conversations. You throw Alex Condon on the third team, you toss him on the second team, I don't think you're going to get a lot of quibbling. But when you're only going to release 5 players, Alex Condon just does not feel like he should be one of those players. Last year, he averaged barely over 10 points per game. He was 10.5 points per game last year. Now he was very effective, 7.5 rebounds, over 2 assists, over a block per game. Again, he was a good player, one of the best players on the best team in the country, the eventual national champion Florida Gators. And Florida returns their entire front court. Everybody is back. Ruben Chinyelu is back. Micah Handlogton is back. Thomas Houck is back. And for me, I don't see Condon's production really changing all that much. You look at the rest of the guys on this list. Braden Smith's production probably won't change all that much either, but it doesn't need to. He was an All-American last year. JT Toppin, same thing. Production doesn't really need to change. Lindeborg, you're expecting him to scale up after transferring from a mid-major program. Dybantsa is a freshman, so there's no previous comparison. But for Condon, you kind of, if he's actually going to be a first-team All-American, the numbers have to be better than 11-7. They have to be. And I don't think this is a bad thing for Florida, for the record, but I don't see his numbers getting all that much better. Like, what would they need to be for him to truly be an All-American? Like, worst case would be like 16 points, 8 rebounds. If he puts that up, super efficient, Florida wins the SEC, maybe he's a first-team All-American. I don't know if I see a reality where Condon's numbers change that much because, again, the situation for Florida is pretty similar. It's not exactly the same. Obviously, the entire backcourt is differently, and is different, and we are expecting that Houck in particular is going to play the 3 as opposed to being kind of the backup 4 for Condon. So maybe that clears up some more room for Condon in the front court. Perhaps maybe Condon will play more at the 3 as well, where his floor spacing could be valuable. But they don't have a Walter Clayton on this roster. Boogie Fland is a good player. Is he going to be elite for Florida? Jury's still out. Hard to say. Same situation with Xavion Lee, the transfer from Princeton. It feels to me like the AP felt like they needed to have a Florida player because they are the defending champion team. And it wasn't going to be Chinyelu because he's not good enough. It wasn't going to be Houck because he's in a new role and not quite as proven, although I think he might end up being the best player on this team. And they weren't going to pick somebody who wasn't on the team last year like Lee or Fland. So they sort of just settled on Condon. It reminds me a little bit of another stretch 4 named Alex, who won a championship, and Alex Caravan, who got a lot of buzz as an All-American candidate and has been a very good player for UConn, but sort of settled in as a second, third, maybe even 4th option on some of their better teams. Condon's he's not going to be the 4th option on this team. He's probably not even going to be the 3rd option on this team, but it's a surprise selection to have Condon as an AP first team preseason selection. And it should have been Trey Kaufman-Renn. It's really hard to debate. Other than not wanting to have 2 players from the same team on your top 5, which I can understand, but Kaufman-Renn last year averaged 20 points, 6 boards, over 2 assists, shot 59% from the field. There was a stat that was going around on social media. I apologize, I didn't poll who tweeted it, but it was that Trey Kaufman-Renn's the first Power 5 player since 1998 to average 20 or more points, 6 or more rebounds, 2 or more assists, and shoot 59% from the field and not be an All-American. 5 of the players who hit those numbers in the last 30 years were National Player of the Year. And Kaufman-Renn was not even an All-American. And now you're not even projecting him to be an All-American next year when he has the same guards around him in Smith and Lawyer. He's got even more talented players joining them in the front court. Jacobson will be healthy. Clough comes over from South Dakota State. You still have CJ Cox in the mix. This is a great, great team, and Kaufman-Renn should put up similar numbers. I cannot understand legitimately believing that Alex Condon is more likely to be an All-American this year than Trey Kaufman-Renn. And that doesn't mean it won't happen. It's obviously possible, but when you're doing the preseason rankings, or the preseason poll, it feels kind of insane to not have somebody who averaged 20 per game in the Big Ten, who's back on the preseason number one team, to not have them in that All-American conversation. For what it's worth, if I were doing my top five All-Americans, I would have three of the same names as the AP. I would have Braden Smith. I would have Yaxel Lindeborg. I would have JT Toppin. No issues with those three picks. I would replace Dybantsa with Darren Peterson. I think he's going to be excellent with a capital E for Kansas this year. While I'm not super confident in the Jayhawks, I think Darren Peterson belongs in this conversation. Again, don't really have a major quibble with Dybantsa here, but I would go with Peterson. And then I would go with Trey Kaufman-Renn replacing Condon. I'm not even sure I'd have Condon on my second team. There's a lot of other candidates in that mix as well. Somebody like Boozer, who we talked about, Bennett Sturts, Donovan Dent, Otega Owe, maybe even Graham Ike, Zubi Ejiofor. Those guys are in that mix. Again, Condon, third team, fine. Second team, fine. But being one of the five players projected as a preseason All-American just feels like we're feeling like we have to give it to somebody at Florida. And while I think, again, Condon's a great player, I don't think he deserves to be in this conversation. Well, folks, Tyon Grant-Foster had his waiver denied by the NCAA late last week. A preliminary injunction on Thursday could let this 6'7" wing suit up for Gonzaga after all. We're going to break that down in just a second. But first, folks, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. From footwork to breathwork, college basketball athletes, they sweat all of the details. And Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every make and model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. And like college basketball players, Mazda sweats every detail. Because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Today's episode is also brought to you by Peloton. Folks, Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach your peak performance. I love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching. It actually tracks your reps, suggests the right weights, and corrects your form, making every rep safer and smarter. And the personalized class recommendations keep you engaged. You get workouts tailored to your vibe and energy level every single week. So let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Moving away from our conversation discussing the AP preseason All-American picks, the top 5 players, to instead talk about news that came out late last week that we have not been able to address yet on the show. Tyon Grant-Foster, former Indian Hills Community College, former Kansas, former DePaul, former Grand Canyon, and current Gonzaga wing, has been denied his eligibility request from the NCAA. And he will have a preliminary injunction hearing on Thursday in Spokane. We'll start there, then we'll talk about kind of what this whole situation has been for Grant-Foster and Gonzaga. In Spokane County on Thursday, there will be a preliminary injunction hearing. At that hearing, a judge will determine whether Grant-Foster basically will determine whether he gets to play this year or not. It's not quite that simple, but effectively it is kind of that simple. A preliminary injunction, which we've seen in college basketball in the very recent past, is basically when a judge determines that a lawsuit, which in this case, Grant-Foster has filed a lawsuit against the NCAA. That is an official and important detail here. There is a lawsuit from Grant-Foster to the NCAA. And obviously a lawsuit will not be determined in the time that this season will happen. So for Grant-Foster, he is filing for a preliminary injunction, which would mean that a judge would determine, hey, if we don't grant this, it will do irreparable harm to you. If you go through the lawsuit and you win the lawsuit, it doesn't really matter because you won't have gotten to play this season against, like you still will have lost. So a preliminary injunction would be them basically freezing the rules and allowing Grant-Foster to play while the lawsuit plays out. If this happens, if the judge grants these preliminary injunction, the likely scenario from that point forward is that Grant-Foster will suit up for Gonzaga. He will play this season while the lawsuit is in the courts. The season will end in March or April, whenever it ends for Gonzaga, and Grant-Foster will likely drop the lawsuit because it won't really matter anymore. That's the likely scenario if Grant-Foster has this preliminary injunction granted. If it is not granted, that's kind of it. It doesn't really matter what happens after that. The fight is more or less over. Grant-Foster does not suit up for Gonzaga. His college basketball career is over. He likely continues to pursue the lawsuit. Whether he wins the lawsuit or not is kind of a moot point. I mean, it's not a moot point. He could still win money and be able to prove damages, which would actually be pretty easy to prove. Whatever amount of money he's supposed to make from Gonzaga this year from an NIL deal, which is likely quite a bit, he would be able to sue for that in damages or ask for that in damages through this lawsuit. That's the general boilerplate explanation for this preliminary injunction, which we should have an answer on that status sometime Thursday, late afternoon Pacific time. That this story is obviously far from over, and it has been a wild ride so far. Grant-Foster committed to Gonzaga in late May 2025 out of the transfer portal, was looking at Arizona State, was looking at Washington, obviously looking at Gonzaga, chose the Zags. The initial waiver was submitted by Gonzaga on June 6th and denied by the NCAA a few weeks later on June 24th. Gonzaga submitted a reconsideration request 3 weeks later on July 17th. That request was denied by the NCAA 2 months later, this time on September 12th. Gonzaga then submitted an appeal 2 weeks after that on September 25th. About a week after that, the NCAA granted Grant-Foster a practice waiver, which allowed him to play in Gonzaga's Craziness in the Kennel, which is their blue-white scrimmage, inter-team scrimmage. It's allowed him to practice with the team for the last couple of weeks. But then on October 17th, that appeal was denied by the NCAA. That is when Grant-Foster pursued legal action and got himself a preliminary injunction hearing, like I said, set for tomorrow, as most of you are listening to this. All of that great detail, by the way, came from Theo Lawson of the Spokesman Review. The main kind of thing being argued in this lawsuit, the main thing that the NCAA is preventing Grant-Foster for playing because of is their 5-year window, which there is not any debate that Tyon Grant-Foster began his college basketball career more than 5 years ago. He began his college basketball career at Indian Hills Community College in 2018. Spent 2 years at a junior college and then transferred to Kansas. Spent 22 games at Kansas in 2020-21. Then he transferred to DePaul. Then at halftime of his first game at DePaul, he had a heart attack. And as you've probably seen, if you are somebody in the college basketball space, you have likely seen multiple infographics that have been going around on social media of a Mark Few quote that he said after their exhibition win on Sunday, where he said he literally died twice, which is a hilarious quote and a very, very fun pull quote to use in graphics, but it is also a true statement. Grant-Foster medically died at halftime of this game for DePaul, had a heart attack, was taken to the hospital, and then during recovery from that, a few months later, suffered another heart attack, and then had to miss the entire rest. He missed that entire season, the entire rest of the next season. So he spent 2 years at DePaul and played literally a half of a basketball game. That is it. After missing that entire next season, he reemerged at Grand Canyon. It was one of the best stories in all of college basketball. This young man who literally died, as we will continue to quote Mark Few here. He literally died twice and came back and hung 20 per game for the Lopes, won WAC Player of the Year, was genuinely one of the best scorers and versatile, well-rounded wings in all of college basketball. Instead of going to the NBA after that year, which you could argue, especially now, he probably should have, he opted to return to school, came back to Grand Canyon, was not as efficient in his second season with the Lopes, still averaged 15 points per game, just saw his numbers and efficiency drop quite a bit during that season, hits the transfer portal after the year, ends up at Gonzaga, and then, as we know, we kind of talked through what happened after that. Obviously, he is past that window of 5 years, but he applied for a waiver for that 24-25 season, his second year at Grand Canyon, and that waiver was granted based on, the amount of time that he missed. It's worth noting that Kansas year is the COVID year. So that Kansas year should not count against him. So if you don't count the Kansas year, you don't count either of the DePaul seasons because he literally played like 15 minutes, then you have 2 years at Grand Canyon, 2 years at a junior college. Well, as you recall, since that waiver was granted for Grant-Foster this last season at Grand Canyon, a rule change happened in college basketball, thanks to Diego Pavia, the quarterback at Vanderbilt, that said that any player who has some of their eligibility from a junior college, has now been given an additional year of eligibility in 25-26. The ruling is very vague in terms of how it was written, but it was also, it explicitly stated, if some of your eligibility is tied up in a junior college, you are getting one more year. Whether that's 2 years, 1 year, 3 years of your time spent at a JUCO, you get one more year. So because the NCAA determined that Grant-Foster deserved another year for 24-25, and then they changed a rule that says if you have JUCO credits, you get an extra year. I don't see how they can now turn around and say, just kidding, that doesn't apply to you. That is where I am stuck on this situation. You can argue plenty of other things. You can argue his age. He's 25. You can argue that he started college, the 5-year window argument. He started in 2018. He shouldn't get to keep playing college basketball, whatever. All of those arguments to me fall flat to the fact that the NCAA determined he had an extra year of eligibility in 24-25, then made a ruling saying anybody who has JUCO credit should get another year. To me, bang, that's as simple as it needs to be. He should be able to play in 25-26. We will see if a judge agrees. We will see if his preliminary injunction is granted. It is worth pointing out, in terms of the 5-year window, the NCAA has been quite inconsistent in applying their rules to that. Isaac and I spoke earlier this offseason when the NCAA inexplicably denied a waiver for Ali Khalifa because it would have been his 5th or his 6th year of college basketball, even though he'd redshirted twice and did not play a single game in either of those years. That was a baffling decision that the NCAA did, in fact, reverse on appeal. But Chad Baker-Mazara has played more than 5 years of college basketball. He's also close to a year older than Tyon Grant-Foster. Devin Cambridge is about to play his 7th year of college basketball. And I'm not saying either of those guys shouldn't be in college basketball. They should. They had valid reasons for why they're here. But so does Tyon Grant-Foster. And he deserves to get an opportunity to play for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs this upcoming season. And it's possible shortly after the time you're listening to this, or even by the time you're listening to this, that injunction has been granted and he will in fact suit up for the team. But this has been a wild situation to follow for Grant-Foster and for Gonzaga. Well, folks, it's the first 6-pack of the official college basketball season. We're going to discuss some of the notable performances that took place in exhibition games over the last week. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, college basketball is back, and I could not be more excited. The madness, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets to games can kind of feel like more of a battle than the game itself. You're battling endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. And that's why I use Game Time. It's the app that gives that advantage back to the fans. It is the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices and without any surprise fees. What you see, that's what you pay. Honestly, it's faster, it's cheaper, and it's way less stressful than any other way that I have bought tickets. And I love that you can see the views from your seat right in the app. The Hall of Fame series coming up less than 2 weeks. T-Mobile Arena, Las Vegas, doubleheader, Florida versus Arizona, Villanova versus BYU. We're talking about every one of those teams today on the show. Tickets for those 2 games, you can get in the door for $76 a piece in section 104. There's tons of great seats still available for those 2 super marquee matchups. So folks, take the guesswork out of buying tickets by using Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Terms apply. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On College Basketball Podcast. And after our conversation about the AP All-American selections, and after our conversation about Tyon Grant-Foster's eligibility waiver being denied by the NCAA and what's next for the Gonzaga wing, we're going to end the show wrapping it up, talking about some exhibition games. There have been quite a few great exhibition matchups already this season. There's a huge weekend of exhibition games coming up here. I'm actually recording this right as Central Florida Duke is tipping off, so I'm not going to have an update on that exhibition game, but Isaac and I are going to talk about some exhibition madness early next week because there's so many fun games coming up. But I wanted to talk about some of the games that we haven't touched on yet here on the show. And the caveat being, I'm not taking exhibition results particularly seriously. That doesn't mean we can't glean something from individual performances, especially players in new systems or freshmen in particular. It's certainly notable when a freshman plays well or when a player in a new system plays well and things like that. But the overall actual game results don't matter to me all that much, nor should they, as they're not counting in the standings. Here we go. 6 games to talk about. We start talking about a player we've already mentioned a handful of times today. That is AJ Dybantsa and BYU, who lost 89-90 was the final score. Nebraska clipped them by 1 point in this exhibition game, but Dybantsa was outstanding for the Cougars, hung 30 on Nebraska with 7 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 steals, and a block. He was 8 of 15 on his 2-point attempts in this game, 2 of 4 from 3, 8 of 8 from the free throw line. Dybantsa looked great. He got to his spots. He is a absolute maestro at drawing contact and getting to the free throw line. I know it's not a lot of people's favorite style of basketball to watch. Certainly fits playing in an NBA style offense like what Kevin Young runs. And Dybantsa is going to get a whole heck of a lot of points at the free throw line this year, but he is more than just that. 6'9", very versatile wing. We saw a little bit of everything from him offensively in this game. He had some good defensive stuff as well. But BYU defensively did not look great. Nebraska shot the absolute lights out in this game. 16 of 34 for 3 from Fred Hoiberg's Cornhuskers team. That included Rink Mast, who missed all of last year with an injury, reminding all of us how great of a stretch big he is. 31 in this game. Dybantsa was not the leading scorer in this contest. Mast had 31 points. He shot 7 of 8 from 3. That is ludicrously hot. That is one of the most ridiculous lines I have seen, even in an exhibition game. To do that against a power conference opponent like BYU is insane. Shout out Rink Mast for an incredible game here. Number 2 on our list, speaking of games that didn't have a whole heck of a lot of defense, Cincinnati beat Michigan 100-98 was the final score here. This looks like an Alabama game or maybe like a Doug Moe Denver Nuggets game in the early 90s. This is a ridiculous score in the college basketball world. Since he had 6 guys score between 11 and 15 points. Cincinnati scored 100 points. They did not have a single player more than 15. Sharing the love for Coach Wes Miller's team here. Kirk Risa, 15 points, 4 of 9 from 3. Shona Bayev, their new freshman, very good in this game, 15 points, 3 of 6 from 3. Baba Miller had a great game as well, the transfer from Florida Atlantic. 11 points, 6 boards, 4 assists, was 4 of 5 on 2-pointers. Meanwhile, Michigan got to the free throw line 48 times. Again, as a reminder of why to not take these results very seriously. Usually they don't foul out players in exhibition games, so 48 free throws. I'm not saying it won't happen at all this season, but it's a pretty rare thing and is more likely to happen in the exhibition series. We mentioned Yaxel quite a bit in the first segment. He was great in this game against Cincinnati, 31 points, 12 boards, 8 of 9 on his 2-point attempts, 9 of 9 from the free throw line. Also shout out Elliot Cadeau, North Carolina transfer, who is Michigan's new point guard, 14 points on 1 of 1 shooting. One of my favorite lines in this exhibition slate. 1 of 1 from the field. He was 12 of 15 from the free throw line. He also had 7 assists and 2 turnovers. Another result that certainly turned some heads, although again, not taking it too seriously. Creighton, the Blue Jays, without 2 starters. No Owen Freeman, no Jackson McAndrew. They went out and beat Iowa State 71-58 final score for the Blue Jays. Now, Iowa State was missing Tamin Lipsey, arguably their best player. So again, part of the reason you don't want to take the results too seriously here. Iowa State also shot 0 of 14 from 3. They did not make a single 3-pointer. Again, maybe not a result we want to focus on too much, but certainly a concern For Iowa State, you want to make sure you find that shooting somewhere. Obviously, Lipsy being out does hurt them in that regard. Joshua Jefferson at 18 and 12, but he was 5 of 13 from the field. Milan Momcilovic, who was expected to be one of their better outside shooters, 9 points, 0 of 7 from 3. Iowa State just could not hit the broadside of a barn in this game. Meanwhile, for Creighton, transfer Nick Graves came in, 13 points, 5 assists for him, 3 of 4 from 3. Blake Harper, transfer from Howard, 10 points and 6 boards as well. Next up, we got a West Coast battle here. Tommy Lloyd in Arizona taking on Randy Bennett and St. Mary's. Wildcats win this one 81-68. Arizona scored 81 points against a great defensive team, against a very slow-paced defensive team, and they did it while shooting just 4 of 16 from 3. That is scary for how good this Arizona offense is capable of being this year. Jaden Bradley was the star, 23 points for him, 4 assists, 0 turnovers, 7 of 11 for the field. Mo Krivas, their starting center, had 11 points, 17 rebounds. And this is worth pointing out. St. Mary's has 2 players well over 7 feet tall, and Andrew McKeever and Harry Wessels. For Krivas to pull down 17 boards against a team with 2 7-footers and a very good rebounder in Paulus Morauskas is certainly notable for the Wildcats. Let's put it that way. The pair of freshmen, 2 of the freshmen for Arizona, Koa Pete and Braden Burries, each had 10 points. Each were 5 of 7 from the field. Burries added 7 boards and a pair of steals as well. For St. Mary's, Morauskas had 12 points, 6 boards. Mikey Lewis struggled in this one, 9 points, 4 of 14 shooting for him. Next up, staying out on the West Coast, the Washington Huskies, Danny Sprinkle and his team taking on UNLV, Josh Pastner, new head coach over there. Washington wins 77-62, but I want to focus on 2 performances in particular. Freshman Hannes Steinbach from Germany, he's going to be great. He is not getting enough preseason attention. It's starting to finally show up for him, but there's a chance he's a lottery pick this year. There's a chance he's the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. He is outstanding. He had 22 points and 16 rebounds in this exhibition game against UNLV, 10 of 15 from the field, just an absolute monster down on the block. So also JJ Mandikit, AJ Dybantsa's point guard at Hurricane Prep in Utah, he was outstanding for UW as well. 9 points, 12 assists. He did have 5 turnovers, but I'll take 12 assists any day of the week. 3 of 6 from the field in this one. No Desmond Claude performing for UW, so they're going to have even more reinforcements once the season begins. And for UNLV, Draw Gibbs Lawhorn, a transfer from Illinois, 14 points, 5 boards for him. Last up here in our 6-pack, Villanova takes down VCU. The Wildcats win this one 70-51 over the Rams. Nice W for Kevin Willard's team. No Devin Askew, who is out indefinitely right now for Villanova, but freshman Acaden Lewis looked great for the Wildcats, 15 points, 3 assists, 6 of 10 on 2-pointers, 1 of 4 from 3. Duke Brennan, transfer from Grand Canyon, the new big man for Villanova, 10 points, 7 boards on 5 of 6 shooting. VCU really struggled offensively in this game, 16 of 60 from the field for VCU, including 5 of 25 from 3. Oregon transfer Jadrian Tracy had 12 points to lead the Rams, and LSU transfer Tyrell Ward, a popular breakout pick, including by us here on the show, had 10 points, shot 2 of 4 from 3 in this one for VCU. It's going to wrap it up for me today here, the Locked On College Basketball Podcast. Folks, thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Isaac will be back with you all on Thursday, and then he and I will be together for Friday's show, WCC Conference Preview. We're going to be doing that one while I will be live at the WCC Media Day. Should be a very fun show. Thanks again, folks, for listening. Have a fantastic rest of your day. As always, we want to say apologies to the Lawyer family. Let's go Wild Popes. Cheers to the McBruins. And until tomorrow, peace out.